What's up, everybody? My name is Bryce Koon. As we get ready to talk about Georgia Tech's loss to Clemson, welcome in. We're excited to talk with you. I don't know, are we excited, Ralph? Are we excited to talk about this game? I don't know. Tough loss. Um, just a really tough loss against Clemson this weekend. I don't think it's what we're going to take a lot of advantage points. This might be a little bit longer of a show. Get your comments in. Make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Best Georgia Tech talk show here on the internet. We're excited to have you along and on board with us here on a Sunday evening, just past the 8:30 hour. Um, you know, let's get into the game recap. Georgia Tech loses to Clemson 42-21. Maxwell, we yes. Yes. Exactly right. What is going on? 42-21. Clemson defeats Georgia Tech. I mean, we can go so many ways with this. We can sit here, we can talk about the game, and we're going to keep this part of the show actually pretty short. Um, Disappointing, complete program loss. I don't think you can pin this on really necessarily anybody in particular. Are there weak spots? Did certain players play bad? Yeah, they did. Bright spot of the game, Jamal Haynes, 15 carries, 104 yards, average 6.9 per carry. Great performance from him. Passing the ball was abysmal, just really bad. And, look, we're going to talk about why I think the reasons why. But overall, let's get to some of the stats here. 254 total yards for Georgia Tech on the day. That's reminiscent of some previous head coaches' jobs, previous head coach yardage total. You only averaged 3.9 per play. You ran 16 less plays than Clemson did. You were outplayed essentially 81-65. You were 6 of 16 on third downs. And really, truly, you did most of your damage there in the fourth quarter, really in garbage time. So for 3 quarters, you just looked really bad. Yeah, it just wasn't a good performance, and I think disappointing, a deflating way to lose a football game. And overall, when we talk about this game, I think that we're going to look back at the end of the season and we're going to be able to maybe you can better identify the issues afterwards. I don't. I think that from some of the post game chatter, I think that there's a mix of realism, a mix of uber optimism, and then just some weird comments about this game. I just think that overall, this was a game that, like I said, and I talked about this on Thursday, you had a chance to go win this football game. There was a path to win the football game. You not only didn't execute, you didn't come close to anything that looked like execution in this game offensively. Never got started, never really got into a rhythm. You really didn't hit on explosive plays. The two ones that you had a chance, you weren't really able to convert, whether you want to talk about a bad throw or inability to catch the football. One thing I don't think we need to sit on here and do is single out certain players for not making a catch or doing something, because that certain player has been by far the best weapon, skill position weapon on your team this year. And you can't just berate one player for not having a good day at the office. So overall, other guys have to step up, and they did. So here we go. Let's that's the game recap. I mean, 42-21, not much to talk about. I want to get to this next part, because this is where we get into, what do we learn? What do we learn from this game? Well, let's start here. The biggest thing that you learned, and it's a dose of reality, is that Clemson has way more talent than you do. And this is one of the misleading things that people get caught up in when they just look at people's records. They just look at people's resumes and they just say, well, that's not a good football team. If you did any ounce of digging into this football game, in this, prep work into this, what you could sit here and say is that Clemson's down from their usual. Clemson isn't where they typically are. And all those things were true. What is not true is that Clemson is down to your level. Clemson's talent level is down to what your talent level was down to and what, you're schematically, whatever you want to talk about. Is Clemson in the same realm as Georgia, Alabama? I don't know, Ralph, Ohio State, Michigan? No. Are they in the realm of Penn State, Washington, Oregon? No. Texas, Oklahoma? No, 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 no. They've definitely fallen a couple of rungs. But the problem is that they were such at an elite level. They were out recruiting a ton of teams. They were out developing a lot, and they had fantastic coaches. They have fallen. Let's just play the hypothetical game. They've fallen now from maybe a tier 1 pro team to maybe a tier 3. Georgia Tech's around a tier 4, tier 5. And say what you want to say about that. They've fallen down from their standards. So to just look at this game objectively, and if you were to say, well, Clemson's not a good football team, we should go win the game. Guys, they still had a lot of talent. And we saw that. I mean, defensively, what they did to you up front. We can talk about Haynes King being 13 of 31, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. We can talk about the stat line. Had 0 time. This has been an offense that has feasted on average to below average defenses. And I'm going to get to it in the end, so I'm going to save it for there. It's feasted on average to below average defenses. What it has not done against good to great defenses, and I think we can classify Clemson as a good defense. They have multiple NFL prospects on this roster. That's a good defense. Is it amongst the conference's elite? If it is amongst the country's elite, I don't know. It's probably one of the best in the country conference. I would say. I mean, it is statistically, I do believe, a top 20 defense in the country. It is amongst the country's best in what they do. So there's a lot of things. The speed factor of what Clemson brought to the table defensively, something Georgia Tech could not match with their guys. The physicality up front, they were absolutely whooping you know what, up and down the field for the course of 60 minutes. They dominated you up front. And it's a defensive line, like we talked about, has got multiple guys that are really, really talented. And then they've got a two-headed monster at running back that when you look at the final rushing yard numbers individually, you don't see necessarily, eye-popping stats. But Phil Maffa averaged 5.6 per carry. Will Shipley averaged 7. They averaged total. They ran the ball 44 times in this football game. They ran it for 260. You don't need, if you're Clemson, a Deshaun Watson, a Trevor Lawrence, even a Taj Boyd when you're running the ball at 5.9 yards per pop. And especially when you're playing a team that you outmatched the entire 60 minutes. So it's a straight up example. And I got this text before we started the show, and I think it's very applicable. It's Jimmy's and Joe's. Clemson has the better players, the better roster than you do currently here in 2023. Clemson has around 44 to 5 stars on their roster. Georgia Tech has about 4 or 5. That's the difference. You want to know where the gap is? It is in the accumulation of talent and the development of said talent. That's where the difference is, and you saw that on the field on Saturday. Give credit to Clemson. I don't know if they've turned their season around. You can talk, you can joke about what it is. They handled you for 60 minutes up and down the football field. They were the better football team. And they not only out-executed you, but this is what well-coached teams do and veteran teams do. Phil Maffa's played a lot of football. Will Shipley's played a lot of football. You have tons of players that have played a lot of football on this team. Overall, it's a veteran team that understands what their job was on Saturday, not only executed you. I'll say that. Not only executed, they executed you, essentially. We'll just go. We'll give the Brian Kelly special there. They executed you up and down the field. You could say it's disappointing. It's a Jimmy's and Joe's things. The lone bright spot in this game was Jamal Haynes, 15 carries, 104 yards. He played pretty well. It's a Jimmy and Joe's issue, and until you get into the recruiting rankings and get into the really into some of these battles that you win, and I'm not talking about picking off guys out of the portal off of their roster. I'm talking about recruiting development is the way you have to build a program, especially at a place like Tech. And that's the only thing that you're going to be able to do to be able to close the gap here. Once again, has Clemson fallen from the ranks of being amongst the country's elite? Sure. Yes, we can all say that. They're not tier 1. They're not necessarily tier 2 or tier 3. There you go. Very true, Will. What we can sit here and say, though, is they're still better team than you. They had out-executed. They outdid everything in their game plan to be able to do what they need to do. So I just think that when it comes down to how mad can you really be in the grand scheme of things, and it takes me to the second part of this conversation. When we sat here in the preseason, no, I'm sorry, Ralph. Go back. You can go back. What were the realistic expectations? You can't change your expectations within a season and then get upset when it doesn't happen. Because odds are in the beginning, you probably are, like Will made the joke, you are who you think you are. Very few teams have crazy turnarounds. Is this a successful season? Yes. You beat the odds by Vegas. I believe the win total was a 4.5. You beat that. You have a chance. We're going to talk about what's next here in a little bit of what happens next. You've still got a chance to go to a bowl game. You still have chances to reach your goals of the season. But you also get the dose of reality when you play teams that are well developed, have great depth, and just understand how to win. That is such a key component that we keep hammering here. Georgia Tech is an infant in the idea of how to win consistently. And you can sit here and say, and you can tell me, well, Bryce, 1990, and Paul Johnson. Folks, that does not matter. You are so far removed from those conversations that you cannot sit here and pull on things that happened 6-7 years ago. Because college football has changed. And that's not just me being rude. It is exactly what is the reality of where this program is. They're in the infant stages of trying to become whatever the new Georgia Tech is. Brent Key, we're seeing this staff has a lot of growing up to do. They've got to take their lumps. They've got to take their bumps and bruises. They also will say this as a offense, as a defense, support staff, everything, learning to build what they have to do. I think overall with where they are, you can sit here and say this has been a successful season. You've seen real growing pains that hurt, and that's okay to see. Real growing pains that did not have really just was a stagnant program in the water over the past 4 seasons. Now you're kind of entering into where you kind of feel like you got to take advantage. So altogether, I think that this is a game that provided a dose of reality, showed you where you are in the hierarchy, and showed you, too, that part of being that young infant program, maybe the naive program, is thinking that you're going to be at your highest of highs constantly, or you're going to be at your lows of lows. And I don't think this team is as bad as they were. I don't think the Bowling Green game is not necessarily a representation of what this team is, as is your best wins. Your dominating effort against Virginia. I don't think you're as good as that. Being able to consistently go beat teams on the road that are worse than you 45-7. I don't think that you're also that either. You're somewhere in the middle. And this provided a dose of reality. I believe that in 2 weeks, you're going to get another healthy dose of reality in that football game, and you're going to see, once again, a massive gap in where you have to build and what you have to do. You're going to see those benchmarks. This weekend, and we're going to get into this later in the week, it's a pivotal football game. And it brings us into, what is next for this program? When we sat here at the beginning, I think I predicted the record to be 5-7. We definitely didn't predict the way they would get there correctly. And I think that you can definitely be 6-6. You're going to play a Syracuse team that is a lot like you in a sense of just unpredictability. But overall, you have to showcase what you showed against Wake Forest, what you showed against North Carolina, you could say, and what you showed against Virginia. The teams that are even with you or less than you, you've got to beat. And that's something that I think everyone coming into this season would have been happy about, because there are a lot of complaints about, oh, we should beat this team or we should beat this team, or you haven't done that in 5 years. Like, you haven't consistently beat conference opponents that were at your level or below you consistently over a period of time. So you started to do that this year. You beat a Virginia team that is not as good as you. That's a step in the right direction. You beat a Wake Forest team that had a lot to replace that wasn't as good as you. That's a step in the right direction. You've made strides as a program. You have glimpses in one game here, one game one there, and against, I would say, even to below even competition of an offense that is very prolific. Defensively, you got a lot of things to fix. Defensively is an absolute mess that is going to hold the program back unless they can. It's going to hold the program back if they don't do anything about it. I think that they will. That's another conversation for another day. But coming into the season, if you'd have sat here and said, "Well, Bryce, we're going to be going to the Syracuse game with a chance to go at 5-5 with a chance to go to a bowl game," like, realistically, 30,000-foot view, you kind of have to be excited about that, because there was really no data points to go off of except for an overly emotional interim campaign for Brent Key. And you can't take the 8-game stretch and say that's what's going to happen this year. And I guess it kind of has the same type of thing. The ebbs and flows of the ups and downs has kind of taken place this season. But I don't think it should surprise anybody that you lost this game 42 to essentially, I'll give you 42-14. So you have a chance to go to a bowl game, which is going to build tons of confidence for the program. You have a chance to build continuity. You got a chance to, build up some of the younger players in this roster, and you have a chance to play meaningful football in December, which is going to do very well for recruiting. Guys want to continue to play in the postseason, and it's a step up. Listen, folks, you're Georgia Tech. This is Georgia Tech. You're not going to just find overnight success here. It is going to take a while to build this. And so I think they're on the right track. I think that this is a track that you have a lot of faith in where they're going. Still a lot of things that need to be fixed, but you found some bright spots that you can work off of. And I just don't feel like we've been able to say that, over the past 4 years. I don't think that's something that's necessarily been the MO of this program and what the national perspective of the program really is. And so that's why, a lot of people were really, really upset about this loss. And I think our intern, Dr. Bob, was spot on about it. You can't really be mad. I mean, what did you expect when you look at the rosters? It just is what it is. And this isn't throwing shade at the current roster. It's just not up to par with what Clemson puts on the football field. Clemson could have gone out here and probably played their B level game, and Georgia Tech would have had to play their A level game to win. It's just what it is. Georgia Tech has had to play extraordinary to win football games outside of Virginia. They've had something crazy, and it's the same thing that we talk about each week. Can that change? Yeah. It's discipline, it's focus, it's mental maturity of the players, it's better coaching, it's understanding how to manage in game. I just think that sometimes when people overreact to this, one, you have to realize where you are. You have a first-time head coach that is trying to learn and understand how to navigate the ebbs and flows of football season, not as an assistant coach, not as a position coach, not as an interim coach, but as a CEO of an entire program. That comes down to recruiting. It comes down to in-season recruiting, development, hosting recruits on campus, dealing with, academic ineligibility parts, dealing with, possible off-the-field issues. And I'm not saying this is happening, but it's all the factors that officially change. If you know anyone who coaches, go talk to them at any level. Once you take the reins as that head person, it changes everything, whether it's at the high school level or whether it is at the college, NFL level. It's way different. You have so many things to account for that you never even thought about. And so Brinky's learning that. And I don't think that he's done a bad job by any means. I think this is just what was kind of expected. And if we're going to go by Vegas, it's probably better than expected of what they've done this season. Look, Georgia Tech's going to be a conversation um, in the offseason about a team that, people might talk about as a dark horse to, if they add the right pieces, a dark horse to, reach the ACC title game. I don't think that's a completely out of the question. You're going to return a lot of these guys, hopefully, next season. But this is a very, very, very pivotal offseason. And so you say, what's next? Well, next is a game against Syracuse. That is a kind of one of those games where nobody knows what to really expect, that you are going into that should be high emotions because this is your best shot. It's not shocking to anybody. It shouldn't be. It's just the realistic aspect of this is exactly your best opportunity to get to bowl eligibility. It is. Then you play Georgia. You're going to have the emotions running high inside Bobby Dodd for that one. And I just think that saying what's next is let's say you get to a 6-6 season, you win a bowl game. I mean, I know I got Will back in the background right there. Say you beat Auburn in the Gator Bowl. I mean, I don't know. Like, you beat a decent Power 5 team in a bowl. Like, that's progress. Like, within the reps of all of this, I just don't know what else you expected. Did you expect to go into Clemson, a team with a roster miles ahead of you, a coaching staff deeper than anything that you have on your coaching staff, coaches that have coached more in the roles that they have coached for many years more, and did you just expect to have a top 15 offense? Like, I want people to understand how crazy that would have been. And as we say that out loud, it would have been something wild. And we would have loved it and we would have had a ton of fun, but it would have been something that was, once again, out of the ordinary. So that's why I picked Clemson to win the football game. More veteran team, understands how to win, and they're not in the infant stages of what they do. It's a program that has had obviously outside of the OCDC leaving, they've had a ton of continuity with what they do. And yeah, they got to figure things out. But Georgia Tech's in the infant stages. So to expect them to necessarily go in there and just perform like they did against Virginia, that's a tall task from a objective college football standpoint. Like, I know that we do the Georgia Tech show here, and maybe we talk about this with the guys tomorrow, but objectively, when you view these games, you have to view them as individual matchups, because that's how coaches and players view them. What you're going to do against Virginia is not going to work against Clemson. So you're going to have to change things up. And look, we can all be disappointed. It doesn't change what I'm saying, being disappointed, because you got routed in this game. So there's another side to this. You got routed by a team that was better than you. And that's never fun. It's never something that you like to see, but it is what it is. And I just think overall, when you look at this and you look at this group, there's a ways to go. They're going to grow and they're going to learn. And I saw a comment earlier from my man Maxwell down there. Yes, this offseason is huge. There has never been a more important time in Georgia Tech football than probably right now. When you talk about the landscape, the push for media rights, the push for brand value, see, those are buzzwords, no pun intended, that people grew tired of under the last head coach. But they still ring true. And it's something that's very, very important. You have to hit it out of the park this offseason. And what's the best way to set up to hit it out of the park this offseason? Get to 6 wins, get a bowl game win, and allow the guys to have some fun somewhere in Tampa in December. That has to be the idea of this, and keep building. Keep building. That you have to sometimes just take the glasses off and understand. Okay, a program that won 14 games in 4 years. 14 games in 4 years is on the precipice of going to a bowl game. Guys, that's huge. That's really good. Like I'm not, and the people who watch this and listen to this know me well enough. Some folks think I absolutely hate the program, which is absolutely a wild concept to be dedicating 2 shows a week to this and conversations with you people in Discord over the course of a year and a half to think that I hate this program. And other side of things, people say, "Oh, he's a sunshine pumper. It's not real." 14 wins in the past 4 seasons, and you're on the precipice of going into a bowl game, potentially getting to a bowl game in year number 1 of a new head coach. That's a really big accomplishment. And there was a conversation on our Discord boards about this earlier about, well, when you look at the landscape, and we'll look at this later in the week, when you look at the landscape of the rest of first-year head coaches in college football, Will, I know you're in the background there. Auburn got to 6 wins this past weekend. I believe they play a G5 team left, and then they're going to have Alabama. So probably 7-5 if we're just going to go off of what that is. Okay, 7-5 in the SEC. That's better than 6-6 in the ACC. I'll give you that. But you start to look at some of the first-year head coaches, and it's like, okay, if Tech would have gone 4-8, that's a problem. And that's why I said 5-7 is the absolute worst that you can go. You can't, if you go below that, it's a failure. And they've already surpassed, they have hit the bare minimum at 5-5. Win one more football game, you're there. It's a heavy dose of reality where this program is, and people don't necessarily want to open the eyes to some of the things that occur or some of the realities of where this team is. It's not saying this team can't be a good team. It's not saying this program can't be a respectable program across the country. They definitely can. And I'm not sitting here saying that the current regime, the current staff can't get them there. What I am saying is that you have to be able to understand the significance of the next 2 football games, which I think the players do. We've already seen the calls to pack out Bobby Dodd. Night game this weekend. Going to be huge. And the hatred for losing that this staff has. Those 2 keys, you hope you can go 1-1, potentially 2-0. And like, this isn't meant, like, we're not going to sugarcoat what happens at the end of the season. Saw some comments that said, like, well, I expect to win every single game we play. Well, I'm going to tell you, friend, you are going to be absolutely disappointed about 60 to 70% of the time, if that's how you view this sport. It's not realistic in the sense of any program outside of a select few. So that's where we sit with that. This program's got a lot of growing to do. The schedule does not get easier next year. We're going to do an early at the end of the season. We're going to kind of grade the 2023 season and a way too early look ahead. It's going to be brutal, the schedule next season. But we'll see. We're going to see what happens. Very great comment here from Hal, and we'll end it with this one right here. He goes, we have a top 20 offense and a bottom 20 defense. Going 6-6 is about right. It's exactly. I mean, that's you talk about 2 opposite ends of the spectrum right here, Hal. It's 110% right. 110% right. Clemson beat Georgia Tech 42-21. Game wasn't even as close as that. They absolutely dominated, 465 total yards. It was an old-fashioned butt whooping by a team that's better than you, and a team that understands how to win, understands what it means to not only hold a lead, but can consistently put you away. And they did that. And now you're going to have to wait for another chance at them. And it sucks. It hurts. It definitely does. You don't like it. But it is what it is. And until you see the evolution of coaches, whether that is ones that are on staff or potential new ones you could add, or you see the continued evolution of accumulating talent, this is what this program is right now. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. This is just the dose of reality that what Georgia Tech is. You play Syracuse this weekend, you round it out with clean old-fashioned hate, and then you can win one of those next 2, you get to a bowl game. It's going to be very interesting. I think, though, this just shines a light on the fact that everything inside the building has to improve. Everything does. That isn't knocking what's going on. It's absolutely saying everything that happens inside the building has to get better. Recruiting, weight training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, trainers. I mean, position coaches, support staff, analysts, OCDC, head coach. Everything has to keep improving. Because this is not what you want. You don't want to go on the road and get absolutely destroyed by Clemson, because that's not what people wanted when they went out there. So a lot of improvement, a lot of things to take away that you feel good about. Not too many good feelings after getting beat by Clemson that bad, but it shows you the gap. Absolutely shows you the gap in talent, coaching, and pretty much bar none where the two programs are. And I just find it kind of funny that a lot of people are like, well, Clemson sucks. Because once again, it's another dose of reality for the fan base that lives on this roller coaster ride of we are one of the best teams and kind of forgets where they are. That's where I sit with that. But hey, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video as well, as we'll be live tomorrow night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, talking Week 11 recap and just talking about the week that was and just a dominating weekend for a couple playoff teams. You could say I think there's one playoff team that we saw dominate the other. I'm not so sure. Not really impressed with the Big Ten. We'll talk about that next week overall. But, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun to keep doing these shows. We're going to keep it going throughout the offseason, some recruiting shows. We're going to get back to doing some of those interviews with the commits as well. Going to be a ton of fun. But it is Ralph Leary in the background. Will Mannis hanging out as well. My name is Bryce Koon. We will catch you next time. Once again, show schedule for this week. 8:30 Eastern tomorrow night as we recap Week 11 of college football. I invite you to come in and join us. Wednesday night, we're going to take a look ahead at Week 12. Maybe a lighter schedule for some, but we're going to take a look at it. And then, obviously, on Thursday night, same time each week, 8:30 Eastern, we're going to preview that game against Syracuse. It's going to be a fun one. We'll catch you next time. This has been Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.